Tegemeo is actually, the government of Kenya depends on Tegemeo's research work in their policy. So she has had a chance in shaping, moving, informing policies. So Lillian, what would you say are some of the priority policy areas for fostering gender-responsive agri-food systems?
Thank you, Susan, for your gracious words. Thank you, my co-panelists. I think my colleagues have said a lot of the things that I'd like to say, but nevertheless, I think when we think about policies, I'd like to make two statements that I think give us the context in which we are thinking about the important or priority gender responsive policies for the agri-food system. One is that the economic relations, economic activities, and economic institutions that are within the agri-food space are really part of our social fabric. They're embedded in social values, social expectations, and those institutions underlie what we call the gender roles and responsibilities, and they have implications on what happens in the agricultural space, whether we are thinking about productivity or overall transformation of agriculture. And then also based on what we've heard already about what the FAO report says, that overall there is gender-based discrimination, and that discrimination there's a real bias towards women. We find that women face more inequalities compared to men, and that's why sometimes you hear, as we speak, we talk of women empowerment, women economic empowerment, because that's where we are really coming from in terms of discrimination. But I think we are happy, even as a word has brought us here together to think about gender responsive policies. So moving from that gender continuum, gender integration continuum, those of you who are aware of it, from being gender unequal, gender blind, gender aware, to really a place where we are thinking about gender responsiveness. So we are thinking about addressing different needs of men and women, thinking about policies that aim for equitable distribution of resources and benefits and rights. But I think we need to add a word there, as you're thinking about transforming the food systems, think about the gender transformative policies, not just responsive, because the transformative ones seek to deal with the root causes of these inequalities that we see, the gender-based inequalities. And I think that's where policy comes in. And I would like to highlight, I would say, 3 types of policies, Susan, that I think are important as we deal with gender-responsive agriculture and agri-food systems. The first category, I would say, is what we would call the usual policies. And I think my colleagues have done very well in enumerating areas that we need to deal with so that we can integrate women into the agri-food systems and women can benefit from the systems. One, as I say, usual ones, I'm thinking about regulations, the laws, legislation. And I think it's Nicolene who said we need, or is it the keynote speaker, we need to dismantle the harmful ones and develop and encourage facilitative regulations, rules, and legislation. But as we think about the agriculture space, some of the things we are thinking about where women are discriminated against is in terms of land and land reforms. I think we've had women control less land, have lower access to rights, whether you're thinking about a title or any other document that would enable them to access land. So I think policies on land need to be more facilitative for women. But when we think about gender, of course, we are not thinking just women. We are thinking about both men and women, and actually even boys and girls, because tomorrow they'll also be participating in the space we are. But a Apart from land, we need facilitative policies in credit and finance. Again, very well put by those who have spoken before me, in terms of access to the finance, access even to a savings account, access to revenue or proceeds from work that women and men have done and have sold their produce. What can we do to facilitate that access so that it's not, in this case, men that are controlling that and women are not having access to such resources? Information is key for women in the agricultural space. In terms of inputs, agro-weather information, we're talking about climate change. How will women organize themselves, organize their work on the farm if they don't have the right agro-weather information? But to do that, they need to have gadgets, the right gadgets to access the information. And I'm sure we have all heard about, when we talk about digitization and automation, we talk about the digital gender divide. Women have less access than men when it comes to issue of digital information. How do we help in terms of policy? Markets also require information if you have to access the markets. But there is also the actual space, the physical market space where women, men are doing their trading. We need facilities that take care of women. I've seen in cases in Kenya where the county governments are putting in infrastructure that accommodates men, women. They have a place where you can go breastfeed your child. You have a place where you can put your baby to sleep for a while you do your trade activities. I think those are very important issues. Mechanization policies are important to reduce labor technologies. I mean, the labor required for some of those technologies. But Susan said women are not just on the farm, beyond the farm. Women need to be in trade, retail, distribution. They need it to be in processing if they have to get better returns from the different value chains. So I think we also need to think about policies on agro-processing, policies on trade, agribusiness, SMEs. Women are in the informal space. Is there a way policy can help to move them up? For example, in terms of training, capacity building, I think we still need to keep talking about it. Giving women the right skills, and men the right skills as well, where they need to engage with the market, the trade. We're talking about the African Free Continental Trade Area. How are we going to engage there if we don't have the right skills to know this is a niche market where I can engage in? So I would think overall, Susan, that better policies that ensure equal access to same opportunities for men and women are critical. But those I said are the usual policies. Allow me to say two more things.
Only two?
Only two. That you also need complementary policies. And I think I mentioned one of those, like the care policies that make it even easier for women to participate in the markets. We need to think about health policies. Those of us who, I think in Kenya we've heard a lot about issues of health for girls in school, and we have now coined a term, the period poverty. The girls don't have the right access to hygiene, menstrual hygiene, and that has impacts even on women who are on the farm, women who are trading and all that. So those are important. Budgets are critical as a complementary policy. And I think that's not just for us, the government. And the last policy, norms and powers relations are important. So I think we need to sensitize and create awareness to deal with some of those norms that could be harmful, and see how can are there some that we can really build upon to make women and men better participate in the agri-food system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lillian. And thank you for summarizing it so well, the areas that we need to be, the priority policy areas. I won't even enumerate them. I think you've articulated it very well. I like what you add around complementary policies, because sometimes we forget and we only think it's agriculture, it's production, but you're completely correct. Care policies, norms, and power. So thank you very much. I see Doreen looking at me. We don't have time for one question, do we? One question. We have time for one question. Okay, two very brief questions.
Thank you very much to the panel. My name is Aisha from Sahel Consulting, and for enumerating these policies that we need. But my question is, how can we make so much noise that the policy machinery in our countries cannot do without speaking to us ahead of any policy? Because there are environmental, finance, trade policies that affect us. Quick example, my country, Nigeria, recently went through a cashless policy thingy.
You have to summarize so that I can take the second one.
So that's the question.
Okay. How can we make so much policy so that they never forget us when they are creating policy? Okay. One more. So much noise. Yeah. One more question. There's one up there, and that's it.
My name is Daneba Jallo. I am the National Coordinator for Scaling Up Nutrition in Sierra Leone. Mine is not even a question. Mine is to say we have a policy in Sierra Leone where 30% of the women are in every area. They are in the cabinet. It has just been passed by the gender minister, and I'm proud to say that that is a step forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting good examples that we need to learn from. I saw one person, since that wasn't a question, maybe we can give her a chance at the front.
Thank you. My name is Noella Ojara. I'm from Uganda. I'm very happy for the work that Awad has done. I've been following your work for a couple of years, and you've done amazing work with scientists. Mine is a comment, but also I would like to pick your thoughts, the thoughts of the panelists on this. Women, women, women. It's a rhetoric that many people hear and get bored. Are we the problem? It's a question. Are we the problem? Because while many women as well are holding positions, are they intentional in holding the hands of the other women? And that's the rural woman, the woman in the informal sector. Today we are here, but we represent many women. Are we intentional to go back and hold their hands? When it comes to production,
you have...
1 second.
Okay.
When it comes to production at the farm, the challenge of the production resources still remains a burden. Other than the land, seed has become a burden of purchase for women. How can this be sorted out? Because they need good seed for good productivity and eventually good income. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to give my panelists a chance to respond. You can pick whichever one you'd like to respond to. And as you respond, if you would like to make a parting shot, please go ahead. I'll start with you, Lillian.
Thank you, Susan. I want to respond to the one about the noise. Making noise. I have been in that policy space. I think we need constructive noise. That's what I would want to say. And what I have learned about bringing the issue of gender onto the table is that you need to start very early with the people that you intend to be the users of the information you need to share. Okay, I'm speaking maybe from a research point of view, that I engage the end users of the research right from the beginning. Policymakers that we want to engage from the Ministry of Agriculture. Is it finance? Is it trade, environment? You need to bring them close to you early enough so that as you begin conceptualizing the issue at hand, you walk with them. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you need champions. As you make noise, you need champions in the space where you're making noise. I think someone talked earlier about the policy champions. We need them to be able to have constructive noise. I leave it to the others.
Thank you
A
so
parting
much.
shot?
Yes,
You want to
please.
Okay, I think as we talk about women, and maybe that also will refer to her question, we are not the problem. I think we are starting from a very low base. And building upon that base takes time, takes effort. But I want to say kudos to Awad, because you have realized, as someone put it, gender-responsive policy making is simply smart policy making. So you're in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vivian.
So to respond to the question, are we the problem? I actually don't believe we are. I think we're the solution. But it's really about how you channel your brilliance, your energy, and your own agency, right? So that's why we started the Leading Women in Food Fellowship. That's why Award exists. And that's why we started African Food Change Makers. Because we need to provide each other with data, with funding, with resources, with linkages, and that's what African Food Change Makers does, and it's free. Because what I feel is that there's an information asymmetry. Do you know who the highest second user of our data on African Food Change Makers is? Americans. Since I joined all the boards I sit on, who calls me more for support? Europeans and Americans, not Africans. Why? That's a question we should ask ourselves. Agency, we don't think we deserve, we don't think we'll get it, we don't think it's ours. So I think we have to start changing our mindset. Africa for Africans. Nobody's going to come and save us. We have to save ourselves. And I think women can transform this continent. Women have the power, the knowledge, the skills. And if we don't, then we need to help each other have it. There's a Madeleine Albright quote I love. It says, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And whenever I speak to my people in Nigeria, we're very religious, I say, how many of you want to go to heaven? Everybody raises their hand. And I say, if you're a man or woman, the only way to get to heaven is to help women. But in all seriousness, I think we owe it, those of you in this room who have a door open to you, have a responsibility to pull 10 other women along with you. And if you can make that commitment, and we can all do that in a circle of influence, we can take this country and this continent forward. Thank you.
And go to heaven. Okay, Norma.
Thank you very much. I'll try to respond to making noise, so that we are not ignored by policymakers. I think making noise is one side of it, but having the data and the evidence to support that making noise, then there we actually have a voice. So one of the things that I would advocate for is more data. We see that this report that we've been talking about, the FAO report, was only after 10 years after the first one, which showed this huge gender gap and the opportunities that exist to closing that gender gap. So when we have evidence, it's easier to make the case, be it to donors, be it to development partners, for us to advocate for more policies that are gender responsive and transformative. So let's not make noise, empty noise. They say there's empty noise and there's noise that is evidence-based, and that way we can be listened to. Allow me to add one thing which I think is a gap in terms of the policy side. I'm based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and what we've observed, I mean, before I even had a dream of that I'll be in Ethiopia one day, one of the disturbing images was about food insecurity. I think everybody knows that image, which has been publicized a lot. But then now, 30 years later, we still have similar challenges of food insecurity. And when we look at what is happening, 2 or 3 years ago, there was the pandemic, and then we had the droughts. So we need policies that address these disasters, the external shocks, because they're going to come. It was the COVID pandemic, which we didn't know about before, but drought has been in existence for several years. It could be flooding, it could be the next thing, we don't know. Therefore, we need policies that address disaster risk management.
Thank you, Norma, for bringing that up. to you, Nicolene.
I agree with what everybody says here, so we can move on. No, I just wanted to highlight a few things. I think going to your question about are we the problem and making noise, a lot about gender is actually very emotive and very personal. Let's not underestimate that. Everyone has an opinion about gender. Not everybody has an opinion about seed quality, but everybody has an opinion about gender when you're talking in agriculture. So we do need to be aware of that, and that's where I do believe data, it's not the only thing, I do understand that, but data and research does help. I think it does help us develop better policies. Very small story. So one of my ways of making sure that we have a bigger impact was that ILRI, which I worked for, was doing livestock master plans for countries. Nice. Women work in livestock, right? Why don't I get women into those master plans? And it's an easy way to make noise in an evidence-based way, right? We've been working on it for quite a while because this whole policy or this whole master plan is based on a herd model. So a herd model of animals. Not even any people are involved, so let alone gender. So what I'm trying to say here, sometimes policy is also very difficult to link that with gender. And that's where our job then comes in, is to make sure that we understand those linkages and make sure they work. Now, one other last example is, for instance, informal markets. Again, a lot of places are trying to put in policies to get rid of informal markets. And our role then, especially within the dairy sector, for instance, is to say, sorry, hold on. You have a lot of women working in the informal sector. We need to look at that before we do a big sweep and say no. So I think we can also make a lot of noise from the technical side, you know what I mean? Not just only about how do we empower women, because that frightens a lot of people often, but we can do a lot of work in the other way, at the same time as the other one. I'm always, when you're talking about gender, you need many approaches and constantly be pushing at all sides. So yeah, that's basically my last point.
Thank you. So, thank you so much. I cannot even summarize. I think you've seen the wealth of discussion, experience that has been shared here. All my panelists are around the conference halls. Please stop them, talk to them, get to know them. These women are definitely going to heaven because they are supporting other women. Thank you very much.
We haven't finished. We are not yet done. Progress, but there's a lot of work that is happening. But there's also really good things that we must celebrate. And one of the things that is happening, and you heard what Mrs. Ndindi Nunweli talk about, is there's action already happening. What Award is doing and what the African change makers are doing with the Leading Women in Africa program. And so the next session is going to be featuring and spotlighting some of the women who are making change, who are change makers across the continent, leading innovations in our agri-food systems. And I'd like to invite Miss Anne Obize, who works with the Africa Food Change Makers, who is going to steer this conversation with 5 leading women in Africa who are developing innovations and solutions for our food system. So Anne is a communications officer at African Food Change Makers, and she's dedicated to reshaping the narrative around food. So we are changing the narrative. We are making constructive noise. Please join me in appreciating Anne as she comes on stage.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so standing on the existing protocol, my name is Anne Obize, and I'm the communications officer at Africa Food Change Makers. So permit me to say, Karibuni sana. So turn to your neighbor and smile to them and say, Karibu sana. How are you? Say something beautiful about the lady or the man sitting beside you. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. You all look amazing. We'll be going straight to the next panel session. And this session will be featuring incredible, resilient, amazing women from across Africa who are changing the narrative through their works. And these women are under the auspices of a program being championed by African food change makers called the Leading Africa Women in Food Fellowship. It is a prestigious program that is aimed at celebrating, advancing, and amplifying the works of young African women who are making outstanding contributions to the impact of food around the ecosystem. So without further ado, permit me to make welcome our distinguished panelists this afternoon. And there's something you will do for me. Once I call their name, please do me the honors of putting your hands together. Let's make welcome and celebrate them. The first person who will be joining the panelists, I'm treated to make welcome Anne Kiria. She's joining us all the way from Uganda. She is the founder of For Food's Sake Eat. Let's make welcome Anne. Okay, another leading African woman joining us all the way from South Africa. She is from the disruptor category. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make welcome Chantel De Bruin. She is the founder of Buttercup Farmhouse. Okay. All right, the next lady who will be joining this panel session, she is Moyo Odumfa, the founder of Atija Experience. She is joining us from Nigeria, and she is from the category of the top chefs in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make welcome Moyo. Okay, we have the fourth woman who will be joining us. She is from Malawi, from the Trailblazer category. She is the founder of Jaye Food. Let's make welcome Jacqueline Banda. I think we can do better with our claps. Thank you. The last but not the least woman who is joining us on this panel, let's make welcome Olutayo, Dr. Olutayo Adeyemi. She is a national nutrition consultant all the way from Nigeria. Thank you. Please, once more, a round of applause for these outstanding women. Okay, so first of all, I didn't really read out your profile. There's a lot you're doing. But in 1 minute, I want each of you to talk about who you are, what you do, and the impact you're making across the food ecosystem. So I would start with Anne.
Okay, thank you, Anne Namesake. I'm so excited to be here that the problem is going to be me summarizing everything, really quickly. What was your question again?
So in 1 minute, tell us what you do, who you are, the impact you're making in the food ecosystem. 1 minute, please.
So my name is Anne Kiria from Uganda. I'm a Better?
Yes.
Okay. So, as I was saying, I'm a storyteller and a writer from Uganda. I run a food website called For Food's Sake Eat, where I write stories about food, the beauty of food, the power of food, and what food can do to change our world.
Okay, that's beautiful. Can we put our hands together for her? So, up next, Chantel, please. The same question.
Good morning. Is it morning? My name is Chantal, and I'm from South Africa, and what an honor it is to share a great message on an international stage, courtesy of AFC. Thank you, Ms. Ndidi, and the organizers. Well, straight into it, I'm a product developer at heart and a farmer. So what we do is we specialize in processing vegetable coffee made out of actual veggies, and this is to really contribute the power of food, and also to create a sector for people who aren't allowed to have all these good and bad caffeine at the same time. So we mainly focusing on changing lives through 1 cup of good coffee.
It's good to have you. Moyo.
Hope you can hear me. All right, my name is Moyo, and I'm the founder and head chef of the Atija Experience. Atija means how we eat in my language, Yoruba. And that's what we do. We're all about exploring how we eat as Nigerians, as West Africans, our food culture, and our food ways. We believe that how we eat tells a lot about who we are, who our ancestors were, and who we have the potential to be in the future. And we do this through fine dining experiences that really immerse people into what it is like to eat as an African and what it is like to experience our food and our food culture that is not being spoken about or celebrated so much in these days. Thank you so much for having me.
My name is Jacqueline Join Banda. I'm from Malawi. So my journey into food industry started when we had a family problem. When my nephew was malnourished, so I realized that people in my community, we have a lot of malnourished children and pregnant women who are malnourished. So I started training women how to prepare malnourished foods. So through that, we come up with J Foods, where we farm, and we are into value addition of nutritious products. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Olutaya Deyemi, and I am a nutritionist by training and a researcher by profession. And so my work involves conducting food systems research. So I support food systems policy making and capacity strengthening of public institutions. And a lot of the work I do with the teams I work with is to make data available on strategies the government can take, so the Nigerian government can take to improve food systems and to ensure that all Nigerians have access to healthy diets. Thank you.
Okay, it's so good to have you all. So my first question would go to Moyo. And we know that creating an enabling environment is essential for gender equity. Now, from your standpoint, from your experience, I want you to highlight what are some of the key challenges you think or you have experienced, you've noticed that women face across the food ecosystem.
Thank you, Anne. I think something I really wanted to talk about, we've already touched on this in the first session, which is complementary support. I'd just like to buttress it a little bit more by giving an experience. A couple of years ago, I was working in a hotel in the UAE, and I worked on the 3rd floor, and the bathroom was -2 in the basement. And if you imagine being a chef, we work long hours, it's a very high-paced environment. I hardly have 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, but I now have to spend 5 minutes waiting for the lift to go all the way down, then come back up. There was a bathroom on our floor, but it hardly had any tissue in it. It was always dirty, and the door never used to lock. So simple things like that make a big difference to making women feel comfortable and to making them feel like they can actually play an important role in the place where they work. One thing I think is very important is providing enabling environments. This means environments are free of toxicity, of toxic masculinity, of negative verbal abuse, of things that prevent you from having the capacity to believe that you can actually do what you're capable of doing. The kitchen environment is very tough, it's fast-paced, and very few women tend to succeed or survive or thrive because of the kind of environment it is. Not because women cannot do the work, not because we're not capable or able or skilled or professional enough. I remember a friend of mine in culinary school asking me, "Oh, Moya, what do you want to do, when you're older?" I was like, "What do you mean? We're in culinary school, we're gonna be chefs." And she was like, "No, when you have children, you can't be a chef." And I had actually never thought about it in that way, but she had that mindset that, once I have a child, this environment will not be conducive for me anymore. People will not understand. I won't be able to have that leave. So ensuring that there's structure in place to make women in the agri-food sector thrive and occupy space and have a voice is very, very important. Thank you.
Okay, please can we put our hands together for Moyo. Thank you so much, Moyo, for that perspective. Talking about structured enabling environment, it's so important. I'll go straight to Jacqueline, who is seated right beside Moyo, and she's talked about some of the challenges. But I want you to make emphasis on the gender gap that still exists in the various industries, including the agri-food sector. Now, not just that, I also want you to talk from the perspective of what strategies can effectively narrow this gap and promote equal opportunities for women in leadership role within the agri-food sector?
Thank you so much, Anne. I think I will concur with Moyo, like that when I was starting up my venture into business, I was looking up to someone, the women that are already on the top, to help me with guidance. So some of them, when I got their number on Facebook, contact them, they couldn't reply to my text. So I met with this woman at a conference. I was like, hi, I've been trying to call you, but I haven't responded. I was like, no, maybe I didn't see. I was like, no, I even dropped you a text to help me on so. I was like, maybe because I don't have your number. So it was hard for me to help you. I was like, okay, so I got her number, and I texted her, but the response was still the same. She couldn't even help me. So for me, it has been a bumpy road to find help, since I'm not in, I don't have qualification into agri-food system, I don't have qualification in agriculture, but I wanted someone to help me with. So it has been bumpy road that women, they wasn't even supporting me, and I was having support from other men, but then the gap that is there is that other women are already at the top, but they don't want to pull up other women. So it's just that I'm already at the top, I don't want to be here with someone. But then the thing that we can do to cover up this gap that is there, I think we need a lot of civic education. Civic education, like we need networking, like what we are doing right here, like what African Food Change Maker is doing to bring up all together women to teach us that there's a lot of room at the top, and it's lonely when you are up there alone. You need to pull up other women. Like me, through this program, I have learned that some of the problems that I was facing, it's the same problem that my other friends in Ghana are facing. Mm-hmm. So we need networking, and also you don't have to just focus on women. They are also men, because we are only empowering women, but when we go back home, we are still sharing rooms with the same men that they're not well empowered. So while we're doing civic education, let's empower both women and men so that we can have a better Africa going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that. And it's so important that as we also empower women, the men are also empowered as well, because when both are empowered, the system will thrive. I would go to Anne. Anne, you are in the, you're changing narrative through, sorry, I'm not there. Oh. So I just want you to get ready because the question is coming to you. But visibility, someone talked about from the panel, a question talked about how making noise can influence policies. The question was asked. And I want you to talk from the perspective of visibility and recognition. Now, how do you think visibility and recognition can advance women in the agri-sector? How can we collectively amplify the visibility of African women in the food industry and ensure that their accomplishments are being acknowledged?
Thanks, Anne. So I like that you say collectively, because there's a lot of things that we can do on the individual level to amplify our work, but there are also things we need to do collectively. First, as Ndidi said, as Jackie has said, we cannot run away from networks. We need to have networks. So like this Love Fellowship, we've met people that we did not think we would ever meet, So me, as Anne, if I sit down and write something just about me, it's not going to be as impactful as if 2 or 3 other women do the same thing. So these networks are extremely important. We cannot run away from them. Secondly, I think, maybe I'm biased because I'm a storyteller. I think storytelling, I don't think we are milking it. We're not doing it the right way, I think we need to empower each other. We need to teach women to tell stories. And not just tell stories the way that we've been telling them, Everybody knows that you do this. Don't tell it that way. Learn to tell your story in a different way. Make your story interesting. We're in a very interesting sector. Food is interesting. It's beautiful. It's colorful. I feel like we're underselling it. I mean, we're talking about it like it's dry, but it's beautiful, So I think this is an arm that needs to be polished seriously, to learn to tell stories. And I think Noella was talking about pulling other women up. This also goes back to storytelling. Who am I reaching and how am I talking to them? We need to talk about food like we're doing advertising, like for real, how people advertise beer and sell it, and you're like, wow, I want to try that drink. We need to start talking about, about food like that, you know? And to do this, we need to know who we are talking to. The way you talk to Anne, a food writer, should not be the same way you talk to, I don't know, a woman who's cooking food on the side of the street. We need to package these stories and tell them well. So in summary, the collective effort should be, one, in networking, and two, in telling our stories in a way that works for us.
Okay, thank you. Can we put our hands together for those women? Okay, you've talked about collaboration, and I wanted to throw a question to Chantel, but it's leading me to the question we have for Olutayo. Now, how can collaboration between various stakeholders, including policymakers, organizations, communities, further promote gender equity and women advancement in the agri-food value chain?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think it goes to a lot of what has already been said here today with the first panel and even by my colleagues here. I think a lot of work is going on in the gender space. So if you talk about policies, most governments, even if it's only token, they have something in their policies to say, oh, we are trying to improve gender equality. You have civil society actors that are working to improve gender equality, to promote gender equity. You have researchers, you have all kinds of stakeholders working in this space. But one thing that we've seen is that people are not talking enough to each other. And so the government will say, oh, yes, we have this program and we have this intervention to support women farmers, but the women farmers do not know that those interventions exist. The civil society actors that work with the women do not know that those interventions exist. And so collaboration is very key, because as long as the different players, the different stakeholders are not talking to each other, then nobody is going to gain any traction. So we all need to network, we all need to be aware of what is going on, and the only way to do that is by engaging with people, deliberately engaging with people. So making effort to find out, I'm not the only person working in this space, what are other people already doing? How can I leverage on what is already going on to be able to create impact? In the first panel, it was talked about that, okay, there are digital tools and women don't have access to these tools. And one point that was made that really struck me was the fact that it's not just knowing about the resources that are out there. If they don't have the devices, then they are not even going to be able to access the digital tools, even if they know about them. And you know, these are some of the kind of collaboration we can do. What effort are we making to collaborate with maybe manufacturers of digital devices, like the very cheap ones, or someone to customize something for us? You know, there are all kinds of collaborations we can have to really promote gender equity. So I think we need to think more strategically about who we are engaging, how we are engaging them, and on what issues we are engaging them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Who are we engaging? How are we engaging them? And what issue are we engaging them on? It's very important. Chantel, it's been 5 months, I think over 5 months, being a part of the Leading Africa Women in Food Fellowship. I would like to hear your experience. How has been your experience being a part of this fellowship? How has it transformed your knowledge? How has it broadened your horizon about the issues and around the food ecosystem?
Well, I first want to say that collaboration is really the new innovation. And there really is no king of the jungle. And through this platform, I just also want to share that the AFC has created such a great marketing strategy for the fellows that in Europe, they have identified our business to scale in Cologne. Now, my problem was that the Europeans see potential for the product to grow on a global scale, but now we have a problem in Africa. What is it that they don't see? And I think this is where we come in as women fellows, trying to break the barriers of policies. And I'm great award is here, USAID is here. I'm not sure who else is in the room, that we can collaborate and try bring this business module forward for growth purposes, and not just for the business, but what we've also procured in this program was that we are in place in partnering with women who are farming butternuts and pumpkins. So that's what we use for our coffee. We've partnered with them for them to help plant our butter, because we won't be able to plant an amount of surplus amount for the whole entire world, right? So that is one impact program that we have. It's another scaling program where we ask these women to help empower us to create a market for them, because they don't have markets in South Africa, well, most of them. So we then become the market on a broader scale for such women that are struggling to get into the economic space of really empowering themselves and their businesses. One other thing that we have also come across in this program is that the procurement stage and policy making is very important, because the coffee commodity is big. But we come in as a game-changing business to say that in the innovation space, in the coffee sector, that we can create the coffee sector to really become the second most highest commodity again. And then we're working towards that in the next 3 to 4 years. So in other words, I'm trying to say that we're really in here to change the game of the coffee industry and really try expand the knowledge what a big commodity this is for farmers and in the food sector. It's really not just about drinking a cup, because 2 billion% of the world's population are having a cup of coffee right now. So this is a business that creates wealth. And beyond wealth, we're trying to fluctuate from just having something that you can have for the sake of, for the goodness of it, but really check your health intake, right? I'm not saying we're gonna change or stop people from dying from caffeine, right? But also another scaring factor in South Africa is that 60% of people dying is because of health chronic illnesses, right? And this is contributed to caffeine. So another exciting story is that how the business came about was that my father was diagnosed with liver kidney infection that led to him having a lot of caffeine. And then I come in as a young innovator trying to, a risk to his life. You know, he was a calculated risk that I used for the business. And today, the doctor saw a market that you could create something great here for a market that can benefit from this. And we're trying to say, let's create a policy that will change the whole coffee game.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we put our hands together for Chantel? So, we're rounding up the session. I know that we just have a few minutes to go. But in 1 minute, I would like to get your experience from the Laugh Fellowship. What has changed for you? What session revolutionized your mindset about the agri-food sector? I would start with Olutayo, and then we would go that way.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. I think one of the biggest things for me and the biggest sessions is just hearing what other women are doing, so the other Laugh Fellows. Some of the challenges that I face in my work in trying to understand how to improve food systems for smallholder farmers, and you think, oh, we would like to find out how to deploy this tool or do this, and you think nobody is doing it. But when the women, other women in the program started to present, I realized that in several cases, like about 8 of them are doing things that I really want to sit with them and learn how they are doing it, because it's something that can answer some of the questions we have had in the work I have been doing. So I think the opportunity to just learn from other people has been very, very key for me. And of course, the guest speakers that have also been brought to address the fellows, I think they have helped me to think about the way I'm approaching my work and my career and how I can scale up impact. So I've been working as an independent researcher, but now I'm thinking more about how I can build capacity to increase the food systems researchers we have out there, women food systems researchers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Jacqueline, let's hear your talk.
Through Africa Food Changers Network, I have learned quite a lot. When I started my venture into food processing, I was just doing it, just helping my community, me with my 178 women, farmers that I work with my community. But through AFC, I have learned about collaboration. And this was one of my biggest fellowships that I've attended this year, capacity building, And FSA have given me market linkages that I'm able, people that have known my products across Africa. And I have learned that the problem that I was facing, it wasn't just in Mangosh alone, Mangosh Malawi only, but also my friends in Uganda are also facing the problem. And we have been talking about it and how we can solve the problem. And it's just a lot, but it has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one thing I can really say that the Love Fellowship has helped me with is that it's given me courage. Before this time, I didn't feel the need to discuss gender-based issues with other women. It just felt like, oh, this is my struggle, this is what I'm going through. But I've seen how much it helps to talk about these things, to share them, to strategize together, and to work together. And it's something I'm really looking to carry forward, to create safe spaces for women in the agri-food sector, in their industries, to communicate, to learn, to collaborate, and just share. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You took the words out of my mouth. But the leading African Women Fellowship has really created a safe space for sisterhoods and to connect in a way that you could only collaborate for your next scale of your business. And what I've also learned is you don't have a viable business if it's not scalable in some instances, not all of them. But I'm also looking forward to the Scaling Export Program, which will allow us to tap into the next continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantel. And in addition to that, talking about your experience, I'd also want you to talk about what does a broader future look for you? What does a future where policies are implemented and women have that opportunity where there is no gender gap? How would that future look?
What an interesting question. I think I'll begin with that. Okay. What does that world look like? Wow. I can't even, I don't know. I imagine women having opportunities and being able to make use of them. You understand? We lag behind so much, guys. I mean, even the men know. We lag behind. So for me, a future would be where we are free and able to exist and move and thrive, without being held back by the, silly, tiny things. It's men, like you said, Moyo, you have to go to the bathroom, the floor is on another level. These are things that some people don't think about. You can only think about it because you're a woman, So my future, that rosy, I don't know if I'm going to be around to see this, but it's that world where women we're not lagging behind just because we're girls, The first question was, what have I gotten from love? So much. And I will tell you guys later when we have our meeting, something that happened to me in the car when I was coming from the airport. I sat with these really important people. So guys, I think you should come and join us and hear this story. But one of the things I've taken away from this, see, I'm a food writer. I have a blog. Like, seriously, am I here? I mean, look at these women. Am I actually here? So one of the takeaways is you're not small. Your business is not small. What you're doing is not small.
Yeah.
So they've been drumming this into us in the 6 months of the fellowship. I mean, you're here because you bring value. Yeah. Have conversations like you bring value. So that's my message, I think, to my sisters as well. You're not small. Whatever you're doing is not small. You have value and you're bringing impact.
Yes, you are not small. You bring value. Ladies and gentlemen, please can we celebrate this leading African women in food fellowship? Thank you so much, and thank you, Chantel. Thank you, Moyo. Thank you, Jacqueline, and Dr. Olutayo. It has been an interesting session. It's been over 6 months hanging out with every woman here, learning from different speakers who have come to share several insights that would change the narrative, not just for them. And one thing we have also learned from this various session is that collaboration is key. And I want to say to everyone who is sitting here, as you go back, look for how to lift up the other woman in the agri-food sector. Together, we can change the narrative. Thank you once again. My name is Anne Obize. Thank you.